I want to dive right into this. Conversation is very timely. Had a best friend of mine call me last week and ask me about artificial intelligence as to the future it holds for the next generation, for jobs, for career. Yourself spearheading Founder School currently. What is your take on the next decade? Where is this headed?
I have kind of the boring take on this, which is that it's going to be the same as every other technology that increases kind of individual ability to harness electricity, right? Or harness power is probably the right way to put it. Right? Like, I think we can think of all technologies as giving humans access to more energy. So even if we go way back, right, like a lever gives you access to more energy than you would have just lifting something manually. Animals give you access to more energy than you could use on your own. Steam power, electricity, the internet, technology, right? Like all of these things are just increasing humans' ability to access energy in different ways. AI's way of doing that is fundamentally different in the same way that the shift from animal power to steam power was different, in the same way that steam power to electricity was different, because now, instead of just harnessing more raw electricity, we've actually converted electricity into knowledge, or at least intellectual capability, right? There's not exactly new knowledge, but there is knowledge work that can be done through electricity. And that's like this cool new paradigm. And so the way we're harnessing it is new and interesting, and it's very positive and exciting that we're expanding energy production so much to meet it. But the consequence of it, I think, will be the same as it's always been. The global wealth will increase. The life for the people at the bottom will improve dramatically, but wealth for the people at the top will improve and increase even more dramatically. Right? It's going to be this kind of like K-shaped effect where there's the number of people living in global poverty has dropped, what, 90, 95, 99% over the last 20, 30 years. That's purely from technology, and that's incredible. And the wealth of the very top has increased dramatically as well. Like, that trend is just going to continue, and
Mhm.
AI is going to be the new medium that allows that to happen. I don't see any reason we would have massive job loss or massive displacement or anything. There's going to there's going to be roles that will go away, but there will be
Mhm.
roles that uh, pop up that never existed before, that those people transition into. And so it's both exciting and uh, slightly anticlimactic, I think.
Right. Yeah, because I saw like an interview with Elon where he was saying that it will get to a point where it will be utopia where people don't have to effectively work if they don't want to. But I'm curious because like your take seems to be a little bit different, obviously, from Elon's, thinking that roles will become obsolete, but new jobs will come to light. So your take is it will never get to a point where people are just not working. It'll just be new types of jobs.
No, I think Elon's probably right that there will be a lot of people who are able to just check out of the system entirely, right? Like, we already see this today. There's a lot of ways that you can kind of game the welfare state in the US so that you like basically don't have to work. And so a version of that option is available even if it's not explicitly offered. And I think that will just become more explicitly available because the surplus wealth of the people who are creating things, who are creating jobs, who are turning electricity into everything else that we enjoy in our lives, are going to have such a surplus and an overflow that it will be an option for a large swath of people to not work without that having an overly negative drag on productivity, right? In the same way that we could have a certain amount of inefficiency with farming or knowledge work because the surplus from our the farming technology we have now is so great that like most of the food that gets produced, or a big chunk of the food that gets produced, gets wasted, right? Like, I think that both can be true, and so there will be incredible opportunities and abilities for individuals to acquire and create wealth in ways that have never been possible before. And it will be possible to sit around and scroll TikTok and have your basic needs met.
Right. And to unpack that a little bit more, because I think for a lot of people right now, if they hear that, they're just going to be like, well, how is it possible for me not to work and be able to, afford my, I guess, like Merlot's hierarchy of needs, like food, water, and shelter? Is it more so from the standpoint of the efficiency will get to a point where the cost to, I guess, manufacture products or, distribute will be virtually like $0? Is that like the whole thesis on that?
Yeah, yeah. So if you think about, basically every industry, unless it's controlled by the government, the costs have trended towards zero, right? So there's very few industries that have seen dramatic inflation for the same product, right? It's like education, medical care, and housing, and then you have things like technology and hard goods and like cars and all this other stuff where the cost the dollar per quality has just declined precipitously over the last 100 years because the market is able to create all of this incredible efficiency there, and like electricity too, right? Like the dollar per watt over the last 100 years has just declined in an almost unimaginable way. And and so what we'll see, and same for food, right? Like food as a percentage of income, has dropped in a way that's hard to appreciate until you go back and look at what it was 50 to 70 years ago. And so all of those trends are going to continue, right? If we have robots doing all of the farming, then there's basically no human cost, and it just becomes like the robots and the power, right? And that can get hyper efficient, especially with like GMO and stuff, and so food can trend towards zero. Water with desalination and whatnot, like that, can trend towards zero. Electricity can trend towards zero as we build more and
Mhm.
more of it. And so all of the like Maslow's hierarchy of needs base of the pyramid can continue to trend towards zero. And there is some adjustment to it, right? Like you'll see people say, put up a picture of the 60s and they'll be like, oh, one parent working at a factory could pay for a home and a car. And it's like, well, yeah, that's true, and you could still do that today if you were satisfied with a 1960s car and home and lifestyle, right? Which means no travel, no going out to restaurants, no ordering out, no electronics, no media and entertainment, making a lot of, making a certain amount of your clothes, right? Like a dramatically poorer lifestyle, truly a lifestyle that
Mhm.
would be considered poverty today. You can have that on one income, but most people don't want that lifestyle anymore, right? Like they want the richer lifestyle. They want the bigger house, the nicer car, the electronics, the Netflix, the DoorDash. And so that does require working harder. But even to achieve that much richer lifestyle, it's still considerably more efficient on a per item basis. The thing is, we just want more items in our basket. So I think it's fully possible and fully reasonable. And the main reason to work will eventually become that desire to go beyond the baseline provided. But it's going to create these interesting dichotomies where, to a certain extent, like you look at the world, and there are these countries that provide significantly more of a safety net for their populace than the US, but they also have much less the innovation, right? Because like the top is capped, and a big part of like what makes their life rich is that they get to benefit from all these things that are created in the US where we have that bigger spread. And so
Mm.
it's an interesting question of like, okay, if everybody has UBI, and
Mhm.
if we lower the ceiling while raising the floor, that I think can lead to adverse outcomes. But raising the floor while keeping the ceiling uncapped, that within reason, I think creates just like a better situation for everyone.
And in this thesis, right, let's assume it gets to that point if of utopia. The average individual, let's say if they didn't work, would it just be like everyone has like the same gray box of a house? Like, how would that work with all the real estate that's currently out there and wealth? Like, would there be some sort of wealth transfer of the people that own the robots will be wealthy and then people that don't work are just like living the same life kind of thing?
I mean, it'd probably be just exactly how it is today, right? Like we have
Yeah.
Section 8 housing, we have food stamps, we have Medicare and Medicaid. Like we already have versions of all of these. And so you could just expand it slightly, make the
Mhm.
provided services a little bit nicer, and
Mhm.
it becomes appealing to a larger and larger percentage of the population. It doesn't require that much of a like radical transformation, and it's very easy to see how it inches in that direction, because like obviously most of the people with a ton of wealth and a ton of power whatever like don't want higher taxes, and they don't want like the redistribution, but you know, a certain amount of it will continue to happen and will continue to creep because, I mean, one, that's just, you know, how the government's incentives are set up. And two, because uh, it's better to have uh, a population that is like happy with the status quo than to like maximize for profit opportunity.
And to that point, right, for the individuals that are trying to maximize their opportunity, you have this post on X today talking about how somewhere to along the lines of knowledge workers needing to utilize the AI to level up their skill set. What are some things that for the average, let's say, analyst or lawyer or doctor that they should be doing right now to keep up and progress in this trend?
Yeah, the interesting shift that I think is happening right now is that everyone's a manager. And so if you've never been a manager before, if you've never hired or had employees, it's going to be a very tough adjustment. If you have, then you naturally see the opportunities and you can more easily make these trade-offs in your head around delegation versus doing it yourself. But most people have never been in that role. Most people, even a lot of high earners, are in individual contributor roles. And so this is the big shift that everybody has to go through right now and everyone has to start thinking about is assessing what can be delegated, how effectively it can be delegated, and the trade-off in developing a reliable process for that handoff. Right there's a really good XKCD comic and chart about like the time a task takes and how often you have to do it and whether it's worth automating or just doing yourself. Because a lot of these things, it is just worth doing yourself. But if you have a repetitive task that you have to do and you have gotten into the habit of using an AI agent, then you can start to build things quite quickly and easily that help you do more work in the same amount of time or do your work better, right? Like I was just drafting this before we got on the call as a follow up to that post, where basically, like the easiest quick win that I think basically everybody should have set up is like using Granola, right, to capture all of your meetings and calls and whatnot. And you can use other services too. The call recorder is not terribly important, but having one of those that has an API and then having an AI agent, probably Vellum or the new Grok bot, that has an API connection to your meeting transcriber, right? Like, so mine has connection to my Granola, and then a scheduled task within that AI agent to go through all of your Granola transcripts at the end of every day and look for any action items that you may not have captured or may not have acted on yet and drop them into a checklist for you to review that evening or the next morning. And that's a very lightweight automation that does require an AI because it requires that kind of like judgment on what to capture. But then basically every day it catches one or two things that I forgot to make a note of or forgot to follow up on that's now right in front of me when I sit down. And so I can say, like, oh, yeah, I got to send off that email. Like, oh, I got to do this thing. And that's just like, you know, that's like one tiny opportunity to be a little bit more effective by leaning on these tools. And the scary part about it is that they get better the more access you give them. So a big part of why a lot of people think these tools aren't that good is they haven't given them much access or much power, right? They're like using the free version of ChatGPT, right?
Mhm.
But if you're on a $200 a month Vellum or Grokbot plan and you give it access to your email and docs and spreadsheets and, you know, every other tool you're using, HubSpot, Stripe, whatever, and then
Mhm.
it can truly act like you would, now suddenly your doors really open up and you kind of have to just get over that fear.
And to that point about utilizing AI to become more efficient, to help individuals outsource or not outsource, but just like have that software do some of those like low hanging fruit tasks or things that don't really require deep work at the beginning. I saw another post of yours where you talk about how a lot of the students that you've seen or individuals that are trying to become entrepreneurs struggle with sales, right? Like sales cures all. What are you guys doing in this school to cultivate that and like instill that into these students?
I mean, the great thing is that like building has been commodified now. And so when I was getting started in entrepreneurship and I wanted to learn coding, I spent months and, well over a year deep in learning JavaScript and, learning about MVC and, HTML and, all of this stuff, right? Where it's just like the number of hours of my life I've spent monkeying with CSS classes. Right. And nobody is ever going to have to deal with that anymore. I mean, just what an
Mhm.
incredible gift to society, just not having to deal with CSS. And these, before it was really easy to make excuses about around entrepreneurship because you could say like, well, I'm not a very good engineer yet. I've got to like secure this app. I've got to, you know, learn these 6 things. I've got to tweak my landing page some more. Blah, 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 blah. You can't really say that anymore because the it's awesome that now you can say like, oh, I have this idea, and you can just kind of like word salad it into Replit and connect your Stripe account, and you've got like a good looking landing page for that idea in an hour. And now you've got to get somebody to pay for it. And so you can't hide behind a lack of coding skills or anything anymore. You have to get to sales a lot quicker. And that's a huge gift because we've been doing these founders weekends all over the country this year or this summer. And where we do the way we host them is it starts on Friday evening, where we lead all of the students through like an idea generation exercise. And these are 9 to 16 year olds, so late elementary, middle, and early high school. We help them brainstorm a ton of ideas and then pick one that they want to work on, get them set up with a Replit subscription, and send them home and say like, just put this prompt in. We have a whole tool that we built to help guide them through this like first entrepreneurial journey. We're just like, yeah, here, okay, so you came up with this idea. Here's the exact prompt to drop into Replit. It'll make you a landing page. And they do that, and there's like, right, awesome. They come back the next morning. We let them monkey with their landing page a little bit, refine their offer, refine their pricing, do all of that. And then we basically say like, okay, you can't edit your landing page anymore. And this is, 16 hours after they started on this project. It's like, cool, you don't get to touch your landing page. Now you got to go sell. And that's a crazy exercise to be able to do with these students where they can get a solid looking landing page in those 16 hours. And now they can immediately start showing it to people to try to get sales. And that's when they learn, that's when they start to see that, oh, building a page and like building an app and doing anything kind of software related now is actually quite easy. Like that part is not the challenge, it's sales. And that was always the case. Sales and go to market was always the much harder part than building, but that difference is even more pronounced now. And they can feel it within 24 hours. They can, because nobody comes to me during those first 24 hours and says, like, oh my gosh, how do I update my landing page? How do I make this button? How do I, wire in signups? Like, it just does it. But then once we get into sales, suddenly everybody's got questions, right? Because that is the thing that's really, really hard. And the sooner you feel that pain, the sooner you realize that, oh, I should learn how to do this. I should build an audience. I should learn, viral marketing or product led marketing, like all of these skills, because the thing that I build will probably change. I'll probably do multiple businesses, but those skills are going to last, and I need to start developing them now.
It's nuts that you mentioned that because I remember I think it's already been 10 years where I was learning Python and I had bought 3 huge books on Amazon and I was just going through it every morning before work and using my Raspberry Pi. And I just remember the grind of to do the most basic things now with Claude. What I had to do before was just I would have to call my computer science friends, go on GitHub, and it just I feel like now it makes it significantly easier, like you mentioned, for individuals to start their own thing because there isn't an excuse anymore of, oh, I don't know how to use HTML or CSS. Like it's just getting, I think, a little bit easier. With that being said, though, do you see like the landscape changing with this generation coming up where everyone all of a sudden wants to, start their own business and be an entrepreneur? Like, because the reason why I ask, I have 6-month-old twins, and a conversation that I spoke to my wife and my friends is like, okay, how does the future look like for them? Are they going to have the traditional path of going to university and getting a standard job like today, or are they going to do their own thing? Like, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
It's definitely a lot easier to do their own thing now. I mean, this is part of why we started Founders School. Was it was very obvious that an ambitious teenager who has most of their day back from academics, powered with AI, can build $1 million business by the time they're 18. That's like not even really a question in our mind anymore. It's more of like, well, how big of a business could they build? Um, and AI is a big part of why that's possible. And I think we will see a lot more of these like micro businesses that are, 1, 3, 5 employees that are supercharged with AI and are constantly asking this question of, do we need to hire another person, or can an agent do this part? You basically just need a human in the loop now when some degree of like higher level judgment has to enter the equation, or interacting with other humans, right? Like sales and relationship building and community building are increasingly valuable skills as anything that requires interacting with a computer gets commodified. Um, and so, like, I think that, one thing that we say at Alpha School is that in 20 years, parents are going to go to a building and drop off their kids. The kids are going to go in the building and they're going to be with a mix of kids and adults, and they're going to learn things and do activities together. And like that's not going away. Like there's always going to be school in some capacity. But the shape of what they do during the day, we think has a lot of room for improvement and a lot of room for change, which is, what our whole model is based on. But, we've certainly seen with our existing students that, if a kid is oriented that way, they're way more able to build a business, work for themselves, do that at like 14, 15, 16 than they ever were before. Because yeah, like you don't need to spend years learning how to code. You don't need to go hire people to get started, right? And it turns out most people in their 30s don't want to work for a 16-year-old, right? So you like it takes down all of these barriers that used to be there, and it just kind of gives them superpowers.
Mhm. And you mentioned something important, right? That the goal is to make $1 million. And in one of your posts, you talk about the importance of creating this environment for them that they have that proximity, and it feels almost like a Stanford where they could, speak to a world class author like Eric Jorgensen and things of that sort. In your own life, how have you been able to get in proximity of the people that you know today? Like, what is the alpha? Have you Was it the podcast? Was it on X?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. Like when I was getting started, that was the bummer, right? Like that's why we think this is such a good idea. Like when I was interested in entrepreneurship in high school, I didn't have anyone to go to. There was nobody at my high school who knew how to do it or who had done it. And I went to one of the best high schools in the country, right? It was the same thing with college. Like the business program didn't teach you anything about entrepreneurship. There wasn't a strong entrepreneurship culture at the school. There was one professor who was really sharp and really wanted to make it happen, but we just didn't have those resources. And so it took a long time for me to find like a community that I could learn some of it from. And it really didn't start until my senior year of college, when I started learning content marketing and tried to get my first content marketing gigs as a freelance writer, and then ended up interning with Zapier. And back then Zapier was like a 8 or 10 person company, and so I got to fly out to San Francisco over the winter break and hang out with the founders. And Danny, who was the head of content marketing, is awesome guy, and got to like hang out in their house in SF and learn from them. And like that was a crazy experience, especially now that they're like a whatever 5-10 billion dollar company. Looking back on that, and then from there it was X. Like that was the place. That was where I was able to find people and meet people. And still to this day, I feel like most of my connections they're either like in person, friend of friends, or it's X. Like that's where I meet people. That's where we met, right?
Right.
That's how I got the role at Alpha, and that's something we tell our students too. Is it's kind of like you don't know what it's going to turn into, but just start posting and sharing what you're doing, and let the audience find you as you do that, and it's going to create a lot of these amazing opportunities in your life.
And that first piece that you talked about, like you built that agency, talk to me a little bit about like your reasoning as to what opportunity did you see? How did you get started in that? I'm curious.
Yeah, it was, it wasn't super intentional. Like I was writing my own blog. This is a couple years after, or a year after college. I was writing my own blog. That was really taking off. I was getting like hundreds of thousands of views per month from SEO, and I was talking about that on X. And then I just had a couple people message me who were saying like, "Hey, can you do this for us?" Right? Like, we have the site. We know SEO is an interesting channel. Like, can you come implement this? And the first person who asked about it, I said, "Yeah, sure, I can do that for 4 grand a month." And they were like, "Great." And then I went and I worked with them for like a month, and then somebody else reached out, and I went to the first client and I was like, "Hey, have you been happy with this? Right? Like, what would I change if I was pitching somebody?" And they were like, "You should like just double your price and see what they say." And I was like, "Okay." And so I went to the new company and I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I could do this. It'll be this. It'll be $8,000 a month." And they're like, "Great, cool, let's do it." And then I was like, "Whoa, okay." Uh, and then I got a third client, and then it started to feel like, okay, this is turning into a lot of work for one person. Like, I need help. And so I started off hiring a couple freelance writers who I could like teach my process to and work with them to actually create the content. I hired I think I first hired her as a project manager, but she very quickly grew into the COO when she eventually took over as CEO. And it just kind of like grew through demand between referrals and X. And like, we didn't need to do a ton of outbound sales or any ads or anything. We just did good work and talked about it online, and then more clients kept finding us.
And when you mentioned SEO, so your job was to help companies get higher percentage of, I guess, click rates on Google, or is something
Yeah, we
else
would
along?
so we would do content marketing with a focus on SEO. So if it was a business like Alpha, right? And they were trying to be like the place that everybody found when they searched for anything related to education, AI and learning science. We would, figure out the whole subject map. So every topic that falls under those categories, we'd write super in depth, long form articles on every single one of those topics, get them up on their site, and then one, try to build links to them, build traffic to them, and then keep tweaking them until they get to the top of Google for whatever their target search term is. And we were really, really good at it. Like, those few years, we were some of the best in the business. And these, like, it was YC companies and e-commerce businesses mostly could hire us, and we would, like, for a lot of our clients, we'd have them on the top page for key terms within like 6 to 9 months. And that was like awesome traffic for them, because that was the era where people were mostly like googling to find long form articles to answer their questions to make purchasing decisions. And so by being the site that everybody in your niche came to answer their questions, they naturally became your customers. And it was this like very high ROI marketing channel if you could get the results and get them on the top page like we could, then it could really pay off in space.
And what was that like point in time where you stopped doing that and you started moving on to other ventures? Because I saw that you were deep into crypto. I saw that episode on
Mhm.
Bankless. I love that show.
Yeah.
I saw you were into crypto and you also had your own podcast. Like selfishly, what was the reasoning behind podcasting? Why did you stop? And also, well, I know you go on other people's podcasts, but your podcast yourself, why did you stop? And what is your take on podcasting as um, a business?
Mhm. Yeah, so, I ran the agency until the end of 2020, and I had been thinking about handing it off at the start of the year, and then COVID happened, and we lost half of our business in the span of a month, And so I kind of had to like rebuild out of that. And then at the end of the year, I was pretty burned out and just didn't want to do it anymore. And so handed it off, and she ran it for the next 3 years before it was acquired, which is great. And I just like went on to focus on other things. And like you said, ended up doing a lot of work in crypto for the next year and a half. Um, that was like kind of a crazy journey, and got like a really great book deal out of that. That's Crypto Confidential. Um, and I kind of had that. I've had a couple of podcasts over the years. I've had YouTube. I've got my newsletter, obviously, that's been going since 2014. And so I kind of had like this variety of influencer based businesses. But for the most part, what's worked well in that space is just getting really obsessed and interested in something, and then talking about it online, either in my newsletter or on X. And
Mhm.
then just if I keep talking about things that I'm excited in and sharing about them, eventually like an obvious opportunity pops up that I can do something around. And so, crypto, it was like, oh, this like software engineering for smart contracts is like an insanely valuable skill. I'm just going to go learn how to do that. And so I taught myself Solidity engineering and was writing smart contracts and working with teams. And like, that was really cool. And then I was talking about vibe coding before that term existed. I was talking about it at the end of 2023, end of 2024, before Claude Code, before any of these tools existed. And, I launched the first big course on vibe coding because there just like weren't that many people talking about it back then. But I was learning all this cool stuff and building these awesome things with it, and was really excited. And people were just excited to learn more about how it worked. And so I had that. And then I was starting this other like AI business towards the end of last year, beginning of this year, when Alpha reached out. um, and again, like the reason they reached out was because I was talking about AI and entrepreneurship on X, right? It's like you just kind of keep posting. Podcasting has never worked that well for me. I like and I didn't pick good niches, I think. And it was hard to be consistent, but I also just like candidly don't think it's a very good business.
Right.
Like, you've got to have, I mean, one, an insanely long view, two, some really special sauce to bring to it. And now three, you've got to have the super high level production. um, because like if you're not going to compete with the Chris Williamsons, the TBPNs, the Hubermans, like at that level, then it's to some extent almost not worth doing. Um, it's good for a period as a like networking opportunity, I think, but doing it as a business, you've kind of, I think, got to go all the way or not at all. Like doing content 15 years ago was so different because like, hey, I've got a newsletter, and like nobody had a newsletter. Like that was cool. It was easy to get
Right.
signups, right? Like I have a podcast, and you could like game the Apple chart rankings and like do it over Skype with minimal editing, right? And like nobody cared because that was just like what people expected from a podcast. But now, you've got to have multiple camera angles and in person and like sound editing and like all of this stuff, I think, to be competitive. And so it's a much harder game than it used to be.
Yeah, no, I would agree from like just a monetization standpoint, just purely off podcasting alone. You have to be one of those outliers like a Jay Shetty or Joe Rogan to,
Yeah.
it seems like, to make it. So I completely agree with you there. Now, in terms of the next 5 years, because you always seem to be ahead of the curve, right? Like you were in SEO, you were in crypto, you made Felix on OpenClaw. What do the next 5 years look like for you specifically? Are you just like focused all in on Alpha School
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
or
I'm fully
Founders?
focused on Founders and Alpha
Founders,
School.
yeah.
It's like I put all my other projects to the side. You were asking me about Felix before we started, and I just don't work on any of my other stuff anymore. Like I'm fully focused here because we have a unique opportunity to build the best entrepreneurship program school in the world. Nobody else is really trying to do this with the level of seriousness that we are. High schools have like an entrepreneurship club, and some college business majors have an entrepreneurship track, and like even HBS and MIT and some of these guys in their graduate entrepreneurship programs, like they're not taking it anywhere close to as seriously as we are around the instruction of entrepreneurship, and actually helping turn ambitious people into entrepreneurs. And so we have a real opportunity to be like the force in the space, like the school. And we're doing it at high school, right? Like a lot of people don't think that high schoolers can do this. And like we know they can because we see them every day at Alpha School. And so we have this like cool vantage point and opportunity to build something really special. And so, I'm just fully focused on that. And in 5 years, yeah, I want there to be founder schools in at least 4 or 5 cities. Like I want there to be at least 1,000 students at the New York campus. Like those are the goals that we're aiming towards.
Did Founder School launch already in New York, or is that next month?
September 8th, next month.
Wow. Okay, so this could be the first cohort for Founder School.
Hmm.
And so for the curriculum, right? I've seen like high level on the website. Seems like they do their kind of formal education, like the math, the English, for like 2 to 3 hours. How does the rest of their day look like? Like, how is that structured?
Yeah. So, the alpha model is academics in the morning and then life skills and workshops in the afternoon. So, in the 3 hours in the morning, they're getting, yeah, all the math, science, reading, writing, those normal high school things done. Then they have a lunch break. And then from about 1 to 5, they're on with us for the entrepreneurship work. And that's a good mix of group workshops. So, helping everybody get leveled up on specific skills that are important to everyone, which will be themed out on a like monthly basis. So, 1 month might be sales month, where we're doing like cold calling workshops and we're doing like script writing and we're doing all these things to try to improve their sales process. 1 month might be AI skills, where I'm like getting them to my level at building and using AI agents so that they can have their bots like doing work on their business while they're getting their academics done in the morning. I have a month on like public speaking, doing a mix of, extemporaneous, impromptu, speeches, pitches, like all these different kinds of speaking to build confidence, so that, they can talk very confidently about what they're doing. Right. So that's probably like 20% of the afternoon time during the week is these group hands-on workshops where we're all building the same skills together. Another 10-20% is these like visiting mentor events. So you mentioned Eric Jorgensen, he's going to come in during the first month and do a workshop on the book of Elon. So we're going to have all the students read the book of Elon and then do a write up on it. And then Eric's going to come in and one of the students will get to interview him, kind of like a podcast about everything that he learned from Elon and wants to transmit to like their generation. Because Eric has said that he really wrote the book of Elon for 18-year-olds. Like he wants more Elons in the world. He doesn't want those kids reading 4 Hour Work Week. He wants them, you know, working 997 basically to build the future. And I think we should be okay saying that, right? Like
Mhm.
that is where all of the great innovation in the world comes from. And so he's super excited about that. We're going to have some of these other big entrepreneurs come in and the students will interview them and really focus on their early years, like their starting journeys and like how they got into entrepreneurship, probably workshop a couple of their businesses and give them feedback if any of the students work aligns with what that entrepreneur is doing. And then the other 60% of the time is the like semi-independent work on their business. And this is where a lot of our like the other kind of special sauce that we can bring to the table comes in, because each student is going to be at a different phase, right? Like some of them are still figuring out what idea to work on. Some of them already have the thing that they're working on and they're like trying to get those initial customers. Some of them have customers. They're trying to figure out like a reliable acquisition strategy. Eventually, some of them are going to have like acquisition and such figured out, and they need to talk about hiring and scaling and maybe raising money and all these things. And so it's a mix of working independently, giving and getting feedback to each other, working with the software tools that we have created to support them with some of these like questions and steps along their entrepreneur journey, and then working with us and saying like, hey, here's the bottleneck that I'm at, or here's the challenge that I'm facing. What do you think I should do so that we can, kind of workshop it with them and help them get through that next bottleneck? And in a lot of those cases, what we'll be saying is like, oh, you need help on go to market. You need help on your meta ads. You need help on your sales funnel. So, like, let's get you on a call with this expert tomorrow or the next day. So you can walk them through everything that you're doing and where you are, and they can give you like hyper specific expert advice on this part of your business because, we're going to have these awesome like contractors, consultants, or just people who are willing to volunteer some of their time to help our students out with whatever problems they're running into.
Seems like such a cheat code for these kids to have
Oh
all
yeah.
those resources at their hand. It's insane. It's
Well, yeah,
insane.
yeah. I mean, people will say they'll be like, "Oh, well, most entrepreneurs don't make a million years in their first 4 years. So how are you going to do it reliably?" And I'm like, most entrepreneurs did not have somebody who had already done this sitting next to them for 4 hours a day, coaching them and telling them exactly what they're doing wrong or what they're wasting time on. Like they wouldn't have been able to like get on the phone with, like billionaire entrepreneur who's like excited to give them advice. Like no other program in the world gives them that kind of access. And so you just remove all of those roadblocks. And like I think the number one reason that most entrepreneurs fail to hit that goal in 4 years is because they spend too much time on the wrong thing. And if you just have somebody in the room to tell you on a weekly basis that you are spending time on the wrong thing, like that alone cuts years off of what you would have otherwise been wasting time on. And I think that is one of the biggest gifts that we get to give these students is being able to say like,
Yeah.
no, that's dumb. Do this instead.
This reminds me of the movie Billy Madison where Adam Sandler goes back to school.
Mm,
For individuals that are not in high school
yeah.
and they want to learn from individuals and entrepreneurs, like what would be your advice to them to get in proximity of these people? I know we spoke about that earlier, but how do individuals seek those resources, those people that could help them out?
Well, they should subscribe to the Founders School YouTube channel. It should be launching in the next month or two. We'll have
Perfect.
awesome resources from our students and our guests sharing a lot of this advice. Um, but yeah, I mean, aside from that, it's like, I mean, get on X, right? I think you get on X and you just start doing stuff and you start posting about it as enthusiastically and humbly as possible. You pick something big and crazy to go after because that's going to get people excited. Like if you're building another SaaS for I don't know, like AI phone follow-ups for small businesses, right? It's like, hey, if you don't pick up the phone, our AI will answer for you and like take those calls. There's like 1,000 people doing that business right now, right? Like nobody cares if you launch that business. But if you do something big and cool, then even if you're failing at it, you're still at least going to attract attention and get other people excited. And so, pick something big and crazy and bold and like try to figure it out and go after it and do it in public and don't be embarrassed about it. And you're going to attract the kind of people who you want to have around you. And those doors are going to start to open.
Nat, this has been an absolute masterclass, sir. Really appreciate your time. I'm wishing
Yeah. Thanks
you,
for having me on.
yeah, of course. I'm wishing you all the best with Founder School. I'm definitely gonna look into this. I want to set my kids up for success. So who knows? Maybe they'll be students in the future.
Hey, in 12 years, we're going to have it ready to go for them.
Let's
So
go. All
thank
right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
you. Talk soon.
Cheers, man.